In this Roll for Crit preview, I've got a game that wants to help set up your trade network in Cargo Empire. In this game, whether it be in the real world or a fantasy one, you'll be setting up trade outposts in different cities, where you'll be collecting the resources made in that city in order to hopefully deliver them into a city that desires said resource. That all said though, it won't be as easy as that. There'll be other players trying to set up their own trade networks, which usually involve trying to steal those resources away from you in order to complete their own goals. So let's take a look and see if this game can do enough to make you accept its trade deal. Roll for Crit was contacted and paid in order to make this preview for this game's crowdfunded campaign. All items shown here are a prototype of the game and are subject to change in the final version of the game. Cargo Empire wants to see you develop the most points by developing your transport options, by leveling up cities where you have trade posts, and of course, completing secret objectives. Now, this board is already set up, but let me quickly explain how you would set the game up. Now, first you're going to choose a map. I had only access to the Europe map for this prototype, but more maps will be available, including a fantasy map for the final version of this game and possibly more stretch goals / expansions. Now, after you choose up the map, you're going to randomly place these city tiles. Now, they are all going to fall under certain colors, representing what resource they produce. They don't need to match whatever the name city is, so Rome can produce different resources depending on what tile is randomly placed there. Keep in mind that at the start of the game, they will all start at level 1. You'll do the same kind of randomization for the development tracks down here, keeping in mind they are double-sided. All this means that there's plenty of different setups, so there won't always be the obvious strategy depending on what city is where there and how these tracks flip out. Then each player is going to get a city card and a secret goal card. Now, these will actually be face down at the beginning of the game, as it may affect where people place their starting trade posts. Whoever last deliver cargo first is going to place on this first spot here. You're going to start with one of every kind of card, but get an extra card based on what you play here. So first player, for example, gets an extra card with a car. Repeat the process going clockwise, then push them all up for turn order. Then in reverse turn order, you're going to place one of your trade outposts on a city in the lineup. You cannot place your trade post in the city that already contains a trade post. Once each player has done so, you will reveal the city card that you did have in your own personal supply, placing a second trade post into that city. Finally, your remaining trade posts will go onto your player board. This will be 12 posts for a 1 to 4 player game, or if you're playing with 5, you're going to put 3 in each. Once everything's set up, you can start playing. Now, on your turn, you're basically going to be moving resources around the map. In order to do so, you need to choose one city as the start or supply location and another city as the finish or demanding location. The starting supply location needs to already have one of your trade outposts in that city. As for the end destination, it needs to have a space open here that matches one of the cube colors that that city can produce. Keep in mind, it needs to have resources available, so if for any reason that was emptied, you cannot start in Kyiv in order to go to Istanbul, as it doesn't have anything to actually send over there. Now, let's say those were the 2 cities we decided on. Now, in order to get there, you have to actually transport said resources. Now, there are many lines you can draw. However, you always need to take the shortest land route if possible. So I cannot take a route that goes all the way around to go here. The shortest one would be by 2. There are exceptions if it is a port city that has a little anchor. You have the option to use boats to go from one port to another. However, you're not forced to consider port travel when drawing the shortest line. From there, you need to use the cards in your hand in order to play them to transport said goods. So we could either use 2 cars, as each car lets you transport 1 land route, or a train, which lets you use 2 land routes per card. You can use it for a value of 1 for 1 train card. However, you can't use 2 train cards to go 2 spaces. So for this case, let's say we use that train. What we're going to do is remove a cube from the city that is the supply, and then we're actually going to take our outpost here and place it on the matching color in the final destination city. Afterwards, you're going to upgrade your transportation track based on how you got there. So for example, we used a train, so the train is going to move up equal to the number of gear symbols there. So that would be 1. Now there is an upper and lower track. At the beginning, as well as at these sort of checkpoints, you can choose to go on the upper or lower track. But once you've made your decision, you have to stay on that track until you hit the checkpoints, or you make it over to the victory scoring area. If you played multiple cars to get to the destination, so let's say a car and a train, then the car would move in its own accord as it's its own separate piece. Now, there are ways for you to move it farther outside of simply just playing cards. One of the ways is based on the cities you control as well as those in the lineup. For example, Kyiv is in the lineup, and that was one of the cities that we chose to use. That allows us to give an extra point to any vehicle we already moved. So we can't move the boat, but in this case where we just use the train, we would be able to move the train up another space. This could be for either the supply or demand city, meaning that if, for example, we decided to go to Oslo up there instead of Istanbul, that would actually have us move up 2 for both the start and the end, or both cards that are either in our personal selection or the lineup. Then there's city upgrading. You see, when you place an outpost here, if all the places for demand are covered up, be it yours or other players, you're then going to upgrade the city. You will move those over to the side here, removing those and flipping this over to level 2, or if it's already at level 2, upgrading it to level 3, meaning that city is satisfied and is no longer producing or demanding any resource. Now, let's say, for example, when you flipped it over, that there were actually no resource cubes here as they've already been traded out. That is known as a perfect upgrade. If you started that perfect upgrade, you get 1 extra development point during that turn, so we can move the train up even another time. Now, you may have noticed these spaces on the board. Those are bonuses you'll get whenever one of your pieces moves on or over that symbol. If it's one of the ones matching the car, train, or boat, you get an extra card of that type. If it is the city symbol here, you get to take one of these city cards and add it to your personal collection. Not only is it worth 5 points at the end of the game, but from now on, if anyone tries to do trading in that city, they don't get points as it's no longer in the lineup. Only you will get points as it's part of your personal collection. Whenever you do that, replace immediately. Finally, there's these scrolls. Whenever a scroll appears, you're going to take 2 personal gold cards, take a look, see which one you like more, add it face down so no one else can see, and take the other, placing it on the bottom of the deck. As I stated, if this ever moves or stops here, you can then choose to go on the top track or the lower track. If this ever makes it all the way over here, then instead of moving along, you'll slowly move up this track, earning you more victory points at the end of the game. At the end of your turn, make sure all vehicle cards you used return to their stack. They are all the same for their type, and then the next player takes their turn. Once each player has placed all the trade posts they have in a single round column, you're then going to go into the upkeep phase. So let's say this is the board state at the end of a round. Now you're going to enter the upkeep, where we're going to determine the new player order. To do so, we're going to go by each vehicle and see who is the highest on the development track. Always starting with the car. Right now, the farthest in the car is the yellow player, so they're going to become first next turn. Then we look at the remaining players, and right now it's train, and the red player is very far ahead with their train, so they're going to go second. Next is boat, and the last players are actually tied. So in this case, they would keep whatever their turn order is. So blue would go next, with now green being the last player. Move those up, and you're ready for the next round. You will not do this at the end of the third round because everyone will have placed their trade outposts along the map, and you've now entered final scoring. You will add up points from the following categories. First, for every meeple you have over here, you will get as many points as whatever slot it's in. Next, for every city that is up to level 3, you're going to get 3 points for each of your trade posts in that city. You will then get 5 points for every personal city card you have. And finally, gain points based on the objectives on your secret goal. You will add them all together and see who is the winner. So I showed off regular gameplay, but there are alternate modes such as the different maps, unique player powers. I don't have physical components for those to show off here, but what I can show off is the single player mode. That will use this bot deck, which will try and compete against you in order to get more points. Now, the way you set up the bot is you're going to choose one color to represent the bot, so yellow, and then you're going to take 2 pieces of another color that's not being used to represent their deciding starting and finishing locations. Now, after you choose your first outpost to play, you're going to place their train, which is going to represent sort of their end destination goal, on the leftmost not used city card. You're then going to still deal them 1 personal city card and 1 goal. That will give them their 2 starting cities and placing their desired starting space on the city that has the highest value. All cities have a small value on them. That's mostly used, as far as I can tell, strictly when you're using the bot. Now, you'll take your turn as normal. However, the bot is then going to try and deliver a resource from its starting piece location to wherever its final location here would be. So that, in this case, wouldn't actually work as the Warsaw isn't looking for that color resource. So then you'll move this over and try to repeat the process until it hits a city that it can trade to. Now, you are going to flip over one card here that will show off how it's going to move up on this track, as it's not actually going to be playing those cards to help move up along the development track. So in this case, it's then going to move the car up 3 and then move the train up 1. Now, it will not get those card bonuses. As I said before, it will never collect them, but it will collect cities if it ever hits on those spots, adding that to its personal collection wherever this is. And it will also collect bonuses of the personal goals. Now, these will always be face up, and they will score them at the end of the game. However, to balance out that you can sort of try to incentivize more on that and they're just following this pattern, those will be worth twice whatever they would earn. Other than that, gameplay will be mostly the same, just you're going up against the clock that is the bot. They will still compete with you for how far those pieces are along the development track, but they will never gain the card from that bonus. They simply might just go ahead of you in the next round. After you complete that, you see who has the most points, remembering that they earn double from the secret goal cards. You can also use the bot in a 2-player game to simulate 3 people playing at once. Or if you decide to just do 2 players, each other player is going to take the trade outposts of a different color. So let's say the red player took the blue ones, the yellow one took the green ones. And after you take your normal turn, you're actually going to try to make sort of a pseudo trade. So let's say this moved over there, and you place what is known as your vassal color piece there, basically using it as a way to block out and simulate those extra trade posts and to balance out that the board is usually expecting at least 3, 4, up to 5 pieces being placed throughout the game. So whether you want to play with 1 player with the deck, 2 with or without the bot deck, or 3, 4, 5 players, there are many of ways for you to expand your trade route and hopefully get enough victory points either through upgrading your transit route collections, upgrading cities, or simply just collecting the cards to get victory points in order to get that win. There's a lot going on here, but once you get into the flow of it, there really is a very interesting play pattern here, mostly because there are games where nothing can affect each other. You know, those are your sort of solitaire multiplayer games. You just do what you do and see who can do their thing better. And then there are ones that are very aggressive interaction, in which case you can basically wall someone off if someone isn't prepared to deal with whatever strategy you have. Here, it definitely leans more towards that, but has a lot of interesting escape valves. The big thing being, of course, the city lineup. Everyone starts with their own personal city, and then you'll slowly be collecting them as long as you move the correct vehicles along the bottom track. And as you start getting more towards the mid game, where more people are going to be shooting up that track much faster, you'll make a plan like, all right, I'm planning to make a trade next turn from London to Paris because I have the London card and the Paris card is in the lineup. But by the time it comes back to your turn, that card could have been removed. But it means they're also replaced with new cards, meaning that a path that you didn't expect to be one that you could score for, so let's say the Madrid card eventually flipped out and you're like, well, that would work for me as well in a different way to score one of my victory points. So then maybe I'll use a ship to go over there, which that's the other thing. It's very hard to get walled off with all the port cities. You can basically find one way or another to make your way over there. And while they make sure you can't just take the longest route possible, it usually was beneficial in the end to just try to take shorter routes and keep some cards because you basically lose a whole turn if you can't actually make any trades. So you always seem to have options available on your turn. Sometimes it could be what you plan to do in the last turn, but other times it could have been walled off, but then 3 more different paths open up. This means you're always going to be sitting at the table waiting for your turn, thinking like, oh, they did that. Oh, that card flipped out. Now I can do that. And but if I take that route, basically you're always going to be thinking, keeping engaged. And I really enjoyed that. You can still mess with someone. For example, you could have been the one to take that Paris card to make sure they can stop using that as a hub. But it also makes sure that no one ever feels left out. Every game I played of this always came down to just a few points in the end. You never knew if someone was going to win, who's going to eke out those extra points, especially when someone gets some of their vehicles to the scoring side of the track, and then they slowly move up there, and just because they were able to move that up one more, gave them those extra few points they needed to inch out that victory. This is perfect for those who like that pick up and go style of delivery gameplay, though I tend to enjoy this one as you don't have to build up the routes first in order to make the delivery. All the paths are set. It's more along the lines of deciding what locations are stronger for you at each time, setting up trade outposts in the right places, not only for your trade routes, but your personal goals. And of course, trying to find the perfect trade cities for when it's your turn to come around in order to move up all your tokens to get those max bonuses. And if you move them up far enough, those victory points. Now, this was a game that has a solo mode and the 2+ bot mode, which is not too uncommon nowadays. But I will admit, 4-player was the way I thought was more enjoyable here. There's a reason why the 2-player mode has that. Each player has a sort of fake player you're putting out as if 4 people are actually playing the game, as it really causes that almost, I don't want to say chaos, but just that enough disruption that each turn, you're never exactly sure what's going to be open to you in terms of routes in order to move things more ahead for bonuses, and what's going to be closed off from the last turn. There is 5-player mode too. I didn't play that one, but I imagine I'd probably enjoy it around the same as the 4-player, as I think that will just have the same amount of player interaction, chaos sort of happening on the board, forcing you to adapt to all the players' different actions and turns. But you can let me know your thoughts, as well as if you want to know more, I have a link down below in the description that you can click in order to find out more about this project, including maybe some of the other maps that they will have to offer. Like I said, I had the basic Europe map, but I do know for a fact that they're going to have maps for fantasy outside of just the normal regular world. So you can check that out and maybe let me know if there's a map you didn't see that you would like to see, as well as whether this is a game you've decided to back or not. I'd love to hear all your thoughts in the comments down below. But for now, I'm Will, and this has been a Roll for Crit preview.